This video details the repair of my IC-706MKIIG ham radio transceiver. A final transistor failed in the unit, causing the radio to draw about 10 amps of current even when the power was switched off. Older versions of the IC-706MKIIG, like mine, use the SRF-J7044 Mosfet transistor for the HF finals. Those transistors are now discontinued and no longer available. I replaced the SRF-J7044 transistors with the RD70HHF1 transistors that Icom now uses. Unfortunately, they are not the same size and circuit board modification was required. Here's the video of the process. Most of this information was found at EB5AGV's website. Thank you 1,000 times for the nice details that EB5AGV provided in doing this mod. Enjoy the video. Okay, I'm about to start taking my radio apart. I got 2 new transistors for the final amplifier that I'm going to attempt to put in here. And I went to Radio Shack and got some heatsink compound, some solder wick, and so let's see what happens here. I also have my desoldering iron, which I'm sure will come in handy. So all my soldering stuff is heating up, and we'll get right to it. First, I undid all the screws that held this circuit board in place, and I tried to desolder the connection to the SO239. And I figured I probably should loosen the rest of the screws. These screws are the ones that hold transistors onto heat sinks. I struggled with that SO239 for a few minutes until I finally figured that I should just take the screws out of the SO239 and take it straight off the back, and that immediately helped. Okay, the circuit board is loose, and on the back of the transceiver is a ground screw for a ground wire, and it was screwed in too far and it prevented the circuit board from lifting up, so I struggled several minutes until I figured that out too. There's a couple coaxial cables that I undid and lifted it up and inspected the circuit board a little bit. Okay, I started to desolder the final transistors, the 2 there. And I used a dental pick to pry up underneath the tabs of the transistor while I was desoldering, and that helped quite a bit once I figured that out. The desoldering iron with the vacuum bulb on it worked really well, since I don't actually have a vacuum desoldering station. There, transistor number 1 out. Now the next transistor, I had to move some of these wires and and things out of the way. It has a shield over the top, so first I had to remove that little shield and set it aside because I had to put that back on. I have no idea why that little shield is on only one transistor. Okay, now that with the shield out of the way, I'm able to get to the tabs to desolder the final transistor. Okay, I used some desolder wick and cleaned up all of the pads real nice, getting off the excess solder on the circuit board. I used the desoldering iron because the surface area on that desoldering iron was greater than my fine tip soldering iron, that one there, so the desoldering iron actually worked a little bit better. Okay, here's the transistor that I need to replace it with. I found that I needed to loosen some more cables that went through the chassis so I could get that circuit board up and out of the way so I can do some mods on it. There was a retaining screw that held a piece of coax down, and then I unplugged one little coaxial jumper from the back, and that made the circuit board real loose. And I placed a piece of paper under the circuit board just kind of a clean area. Then I kind of laid out the transistor that I'm supposed to try to stuff in there. Notice that it is a larger case on it than the ones I took out, and I'm kind of marking the circuit board where that's going to have to go in. Fortunately, now for the moment of truth, I'm going to take the Dremel tool and see if I can expand these out a bit without harming any other traces or anything. So let's see what happens. I went slow with the Dremel tool and I checked it off, and I referred to the website for details on there's a couple traces you may or may not be concerned with on the circuit board. I went slow and checked off, and then I used a small file to get the corners because the actual bit on a Dremel tool had a little bit larger radius and I didn't want to take that much material out of the circuit board, so I used a small file to get the corners. I'm pointing out small traces on the circuit board on the other side that you need to be aware of. Notice this is the back side of the circuit board, and those transistors actually will be mounted from the top side, but I just was dry fitting them from the other side as I was reaming the holes out. Now I just laid down the circuit board back into position and placed the new transistors in place to see if everything would line up with the tabs and with the screw holes on the heatsink and everything. Now I added a bit more heatsink compound on all the spots that had it. Don't want to add too much though, or otherwise you're adding an insulated barrier between that heatsink and the transistor.
Okay, what I did was unplug, there's two ribbon cables there, I just unplugged the second one and I'm going to attempt to get them from the top here. Let's see what happens, right? Make sure all these little coax cables are where they're supposed to be.
I started mounting the circuit board back into place. I did not tighten them though, I left them loose so I can move the circuit board around a bit. Reconnected the little ribbon cable there and placed the cables in place. And the bottom side, reattached this screw that holds one cable in place and attached the other cable in its spot.
Alright, I've been doing some work and the camera was shut off and I didn't realize it. What I did was take the transistors, and you may notice that the tabs were just a little bit too long for these spots here, so I cut the two tabs off, and notice that on the old transistors they had these grounding tabs, but they don't exist on these new transistors, so I'm relying on them being grounded to the heatsink. And I put them in the same orientation as the ones came out. And as I put them in here, just so they match up with the pads on the circuit board, I'm going to pull this circuit board all the way back just as far as it will go. Then I'm going to tighten the screws on the circuit board to hold them there, so the transistors will sit right in the spot where I think they should be. So I'll tighten these 4 screws. And also I'll tighten there's a couple of heatsink screws right heatsink screws for it. This is the VHF and UHF file, which we are not changing. Okay, so this is it. I am going to attempt to solder these things in place and hope the solder sucks under them. I probably should have tinned the transistors before I popped them in there. I just wondered if I could easily take them out. They're full of heatsink.
After I tinned the bottom side of the tabs of the transistors, I screwed in the heatsink screws on the transistors and then soldered the tabs. Moved some of the wires and cables back to where they were supposed to be. I used my dental pick. Once I got some solder on, to use the dental pick to hold the tab down firm to the circuit board until the solder cooled. Okay, this is the transistor that needed a little shield on top, so I removed the heatsink screws and mounted the shield back in place, and then I will put the screws back, or I put the screws back in and then soldered it in place. Put all the cables back in the areas that they're supposed to be.
Okay, I'm getting ready to put this other SO239 on here, and when I desoldered it, there was a little sleeve right on that power output right there that kind of just got melted away. So I'm going to put a little sleeve in that. This is probably too long actually. Cut it down.
Okay, I'm just about set. Put the, actually that's the top cover on.
Okay, this is my operating position, and I'm going to connect up the antenna, the power supply, and if this actually works, I will need to adjust the bias voltage on those, or actually bias current on those transistors. Plug in a key here and turn on the power supply, and this will be a telltale situation where even with the unit off, it pulled about 10 amps of current. So let me hit the master switch. That is a good sign. Voltage, no current. This hasn't been on in a long time. Okay, something's not connected up here. Hang on a minute. Okay, this is the Anderson power pole coming in from the rig, and it was a little bit unplugged right there. So let's see what happens again here. Ooh, yes. That is good. Now let's turn it to 20 meters because I know my antenna tuner is adjusted for 20 meters. If I can remember how to do this, it's been such a long time. Don't hear anything. That is not good. Okay, let me look at it and see what's going on. Okay, success. After a lot of scratching my brain, what it turned out to be is I had the antenna screwed into the top connector, which was taken off. That comes right off of the RF board, final amplifier board, but that is not the HF connector. The HF connector is at the bottom. So I had the antenna on the wrong connector. And so now let's plug in a key again. Okay. I'm gonna have to get my key wired up. Hang on a minute. Okay, let's see if we can find a somewhat quiet frequency so I'm not jamming anybody out. And I'll take a look at the ammeter, and here goes. Whoop, guess it would help if it was in CW mode. Alright, we'll go up somewhere. It's not too disturbing. Okay. Shows output, but not how much it should be. But I don't know if I have the power set up on this thing or not. Okay, the power was not set up to the max on the rig, so let's see what happens again here. Still not the greatest. SWR is pretty bad, so let me tune it up. Okay, I tuned up the antenna tuner, and it was quite off. I thought it was set for 20 meters. And we have some much better looking numbers. There we go. So now what I'll have to do is get out the manual and adjust the bias for these transistors. And it looks like it may be working. I'll have to SWR. That means there's probably not parasitics flying all over the place somewhere. And let me get the manual and see what we have to do.
3, good evening, K7JM N5NR.
Okay, Ben, thank you very much. Yes, I actually contacted a repair shop for this thing, and they said, oh, those transistors aren't even available, so the only choice there was to replace the final amplifier board, which would have cost about $400. And so I thought, well, I'm going to try this. I'm glad I did. It seems like it's working. So 73, Ben, and I hope to talk to you later once I get everything buttoned up. It's actually been like 2 years since I've been on the air because this thing has just been out and I didn't know what to do about it. So I'm excited to get back on. So N5NR, this is K7JM in Jefferson City, Montana, and I will be going QRT.
Lost you then, John. 73 for now. This is November 5, November radio.
Okay, Ben, 73, K7JM.
QRZ from November 5, November radio.
So it works. Got contact in Arkansas. N5NR, first contact with the rig with new transistors in it, and it worked. So I'll get it all buttoned up here and I'll be back on the air after being off for a couple years.